Alright everybody, welcome back to another video. So today is the day we are finally getting ready to taste our adjunct batches. They're carved up and they're ready to go. I apologize for the long string of videos that just aren't grain to glass related. I know you guys really enjoy those and that's kind of my thing, but it is getting ready for the holiday season right now and I really just haven't had time to brew as much. So I'm trying to space these videos out as much as I can to still provide relevant and interesting content for you guys. But believe me, there is a grain to glass video coming very soon. I made a porter a couple weeks ago, and that should be ready to keg any day now. So keep an eye out on the channel. There will be another grain to glass coming soon. So I brewed this Russian Imperial Stout in the April/May timeframe of this year, and I aged it in secondary in bulk for about 6.5 months before bottling it and then kegging it. If you want to see the brew day video, there's going to be a card notification icon popping up right here in the corner. That should take you over to the brew day. I do apologize for the terrible choices of music that I made in that video. It was a bit, that was a long time ago. So with very strong Russian Imperial Stouts like this beer here, they require a very long aging period to smooth out, mellow out some of those very sharp, acrid roast flavors and to kind of gain some character. This is a 10.5% beer, so it definitely required some aging time. So I had 6 gallons of the base beer in total. So I ended up kegging 2 gallons of it and keeping that separated from any sort of special adjuncts. If you want to see the tasting video where I go over the results of the base beer, card notification icon for that video is going to pop up right now. So I kegged 2 gallons of the base beer just to enjoy by itself, and it was excellent. So to further bastardize this excellent beer, I decided to add 4 different types of adjuncts to 4 separate 1-gallon batches in 4 1-gallon jugs. And essentially what came out of it was 4 wildly different beers that had some very interesting flavors associated with them. So I'm going to go ahead and cut to the past now, where I explain what I was doing and show you the ingredients on the day that I actually put the adjuncts together. Today is all about the adjuncts, so we're going to do 4 separate experimental 1-gallon adjunct-based batches. So I've got 4 1-gallon jugs, and I'm going to go ahead and rack 1 gallon of Imperial Stout into each one of them, and we're going to put a different adjunct on each one. So in the first fermenter, I'm going to go for a sort of Mexican stout style thing, where I have basically cacao nibs, some cinnamon, and a dried chipotle pepper that's going to go in. The second one is going to be more of your classic bourbon oak aged, barrel aged style stout, but instead of using bourbon, I'm going to play around with it and try to use some Scotch. I'm going to use a peaty, kind of smoky type of Scotch that hopefully will play off well with the Imperial Stout flavors. And the third one is going to be kind of a twist on a coffee stout. I'm going to use coffee, but I'm also going to add some vanilla bean in there to kind of play with the silky characteristics of each of those adjuncts. And the fourth and final one is going to be like a Black Forest style Imperial Stout meets fruit beer. I'm going to put it on top of some sour cherries, and we're going to see what kinds of flavors come out of that. So stay tuned. I'm basically going to document the transfer process and show you the ingredients for each one of these adjunct batches in a moment. But they're all going to sit on their ingredients for anywhere between 3 and 7 days, and then I'm going to bottle them. And hopefully the results are good, so stay tuned. Alright, so here is the series of ingredients for each of my adjunct batches. So in the first batch, and keep in mind these are all 1-gallon batches, so I'm kind of scaling things down half the time, and the other half of the time I'm just kind of throwing it in there to see what's going to happen. So here I have 1 dried chipotle pepper. So that has been boiled for about 2 or 3 minutes in some water to try and get it to completely sanitize. I have 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and I have about 2 ounces of cacao nibs here. Second one, it's going to be about 1 ounce of ground dark roast coffee and 1 vanilla bean that I split down the middle. So for the third one, we have about ½ an ounce of dark toast oak chips, and I'm going to add probably about 1 ounce of some of my finer Scotch. I know that this is probably a little bit of sacrilege, but trust me, it's not that much going in. Probably maybe half a shot's worth. And then finally, over here, I've boiled some oak chips, another ½ ounce of dark toast oak chips, with about 1 pound of sour cherries. Okay, so now it's time to start transferring to the bottling bucket, where I'm going to blend each of these two beers together. So we have consistent flavor across the whole batch. The final gravity reading is in after 6 months in the fermenter, clarifying, and it's looking like it's about 1022. Okay, well, we have our 6 gallons in the bottling bucket here, and we're going to start racking them all on top of each and every single one of our 1 gallon jugs here. And then the cherries actually ended up in the wide fermenter, the bucket fermenter here, because, well, basically they are too big to get into the larger 3 gallon fermenters. Even with the wide mouth, there's just not enough space to squish cherries in there. And actually, now I'm thinking about it, it would really be a pain in the butt to get them back out once they're all done. So we're just going to do it for a couple days in the wide mouth. It shouldn't be too bad. Just as a cautionary measure, I'm probably going to try and put some CO2 in there and try and push the oxygen out if I can. Otherwise, it could oxidize the beer a little bit. Hopefully that's not a problem, but next I really do need to get a small wide mouth fermenter so that I can do secondaries with stuff like that and not have to worry about getting all that stuff out. So anyway, let's go ahead and start racking the beer onto these ingredients. Okay, now I need to keg the rest of this beer. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that as normal. And I will catch up with everybody in this video as far as the tastings for each of these 4 beers. I'm going to let them sit on their ingredients for about a week, and then go ahead and bottle them. And a couple weeks after that, we'll know how the final results turned out. So my wonderful girlfriend got me this flight board thing here. Because she likes to drink smaller portions of beer than I do, and I don't really have that much of a selection of small glassware, so she went ahead and set this up wonderfully. So this works out perfectly for this type of video. So here I have my 4 varieties of Russian Imperial Stout. So they all have slightly different appearances here. So the Mexican Stout has some very large bubbles, but in contrast, the Coffee Stout has very small ones, along with the cherry. And then the Scotch Stout has this strange pattern forming on the surface. And I wonder if that has anything to do with the higher amount of alcohol in it. All of them have the same inky black appearance with the tan, slightly dark head. So next, of course, the category of aroma. So the Mexican style Stout here, first of all, with the cinnamon, cacao nibs, and 1 dried chili pepper. So it's very strong in the stout aroma, but also there's this nice kind of background of cinnamon in it. The cinnamon is not overpowering at all. Kind of smells a bit like Christmas style beer, in fact. Yeah, so this is the first time I've actually smelled spice in a beer that I put spice into. This is coincidentally the first time that I put spice in the secondary instead of putting it in a boil. A little bit of dark chocolate in there as well. The base beer smells very strong of dark chocolate, dark roast coffee, and roast grains, as well as a little bit of a dark fruit character and some woody notes for reference. So at the moment, I'm just going to be comparing this to the regular base beer aromas. And the biggest difference really is cinnamon. I don't get any sort of pepper or chocolate note outside of it already having the chocolate from the base beer. So for the coffee stout, right away, this thing smells like a cappuccino. In fact, the coffee smell is so strong, it kind of is, yeah, it's kind of taking over completely. I don't really get much else besides coffee, but it's like that mocha kind of coffee, not just straight up coffee. So I guess that means it's blending with the chocolate nicely. No vanilla at all. So for the cherry, I did oak and cherry. Cherry is definitely the strongest aroma here. That's really all I get. And the cherry kind of overwhelms the stout in this case as well. And then for the Scotch stout, this just smells like straight up peat, and it's like mossy. Not a fan of the way this smells. Alright, so I'm gonna combine body and flavor in the same tasting notes because these are very different in each of their characteristics, and I think if I just kind of went through all four of them, doing the mouthfeel body section of the tasting notes, then it's probably going to kind of obliterate the flavor once I get to it. So I'm going to do flavor in each of these. So I'm going to go ahead and start from this end, which is the Scotch style stout, and we'll start with that. So this has gotten a bit better. This is not one that I would do again. The mouthfeel of the beer is on the medium side of things, but it's just got this really boozy characteristic now that the base beer doesn't have. And I'm really surprised because I only added a splash of Scotch to the 1 gallon fermenter. Very, very little amount of overall alcohol added to this. So I'm surprised it gets that boozy characteristic. The peatiness and the smokiness of the Scotch are not good additions to this beer at all. I kind of wanted to take a twist on the classic bourbon and oak combination, but I really do think that bourbon would have worked much, much better than Scotch in this beer. And I'm a person that likes Scotch, so I'm really surprised at how badly this worked out. It's kind of unpleasant to drink, but thankfully I didn't add so much that it completely destroys the overall quality of the base beer. So I mean, I could still drink it, just not super pleasantly. So really not a huge fan of the Scotch style one. There's also too much oak in this. Again, I made the same mistake putting too much oak in my beer. So really overall, probably like a 4 out of 10 on this one. Really kind of took a hit to the regular beer. So definitely made this beer worse than the base beer by doing this, unfortunately. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next one, which is the cherry style stout here. And the cherry stout turned out better than the Scotch one. So we're just gonna kind of work our way up, I think. So it's rather tart. I mean, I did use sour cherries, and I was advised to do that because apparently there's more cherry flavor left over in the beer after the second fermentation than with the sweet cherry alternative. I had just recently done a fruit beer with a blueberry beer where I put, I think, something along the lines of the equivalent of 3 pounds of fruit into 5 gallons of wheat beer and got a lot of flavor out of that. So I figured with a stronger flavored beer like this Russian Imperial Stout with a higher percentage ABV, a lot more dark, strong, powerful flavors that I would need to amp up the amount of fruit put into the beer. So I added a full pound of cherry to the beer for I think about a gallon and a half worth of beer. Unfortunately, that's too much. I think it is a little bit overpowering. If you're a fan of tart and sour beers, you will like this, but I have yet to meet a person that actually likes a sour stout. That being said, it's a lot smoother than the Scotch style beer that I made here. It's a lot smoother, it's a lot easier on the palate, it's not as harsh tasting. And ultimately, after you have enough of this, you will begin to like it. It's not my best example, and then again, it also did take away from the regular base beer that I made. Would not do this one again, but if I did, I would probably add sweeter backbone to this, perhaps less cherry, perhaps more chocolate, something to kind of balance out the sour cherry, and I would definitely not put oak into it, because I'm really not. Interestingly enough, I put the same amount of oak into this one as I did to the Scotch one, and I'm not getting as much oak out of it. But it's a flavor that doesn't quite fit with a stout. It's not horrible. It's not awesome. It just doesn't fit. But overall, it's definitely much easier to drink and much better than the Scotch blended one. So I'm gonna give this one 5. So then we're gonna move on to the coffee stout here. So this one was some ground coffee, dark roast this time, and some vanilla bean. So hopefully this one turns out with a little bit less of an overpowering coffee taste than it had in the Aroma. Oh, wow. This tastes 100% like a Founder's Breakfast Stout. I'm not even joking. That is a very good coffee flavor. Okay. That's how I'm making my coffee stouts from now on. There's the secret. So I made a coffee stout previously. Coffee and cacao nibs. Just a regular stout. And I did coffee in secondary along with the cacao nibs, but the problem was I did brewed coffee. I did a sort of light roast, kind of cold brew style coffee that then I dumped in. So that gave me sort of a kind of a green coffee flavor, which was not super awesome, but not horrible. It got the intended effect across, but this had dark roast coffee, ground, dumped straight into the secondary, and that just extracted all that coffee flavor into the beer. This is outstanding. Actually, I'll admit this is actually the first time I've actually cracked one of the coffee bottles open. I have tried the other 3, and this is really blowing my mind right now. That is an overall super successful batch right there. Wow. If you like coffee, you'll like it, though. If you like a black coffee, like I do, you don't put things in it, you're really gonna like it. If you don't, you might not. It's not super sweet, it's not really bitter either, though. It doesn't have the harsh, upfront, kind of slap in the face that a strong brewed cup of coffee does. But this thing is seriously, seriously strong in the coffee. I get absolutely no vanilla, though, which is unfortunate. I was kind of hoping I'd get a little bit of a sweet vanilla coming out of it, but I really don't. The mouthfeel on this one's pretty much kind of in the medium range as well, just like the others. It's not as smooth as the cherry, it's not as harsh as the Scotch, and overall, I mean, this one's a pleasure to drink. Wow. I'm gonna give it a 9. So I gave my base beer a 10 because it really truly was the best beer that I've made all year long, and I really surprised myself. Even though, full disclaimer, it was not my own recipe. I did take a recipe from somebody else on that. But it is actually quite a nice little addition here. The coffee is really good. So I'm going to give it a 9, not a 10. It's not better than the base beer, especially because I wanted to have some of that vanilla in there. Vanilla beans, if you don't know, are actually really expensive. So if I use them, I kind of want to get something out of them. So I'm a bit disappointed by that. But really, this is standing in stark contrast to the last two. This is just absolutely so much better. And if you really like coffee, you're really gonna like that. It does work very well with the chocolate flavors that you get from the malts in the base beer. I did not add any chocolate to this particular batch, but it did work out very well. So this one's gonna be a 9. So last but certainly not least is this Mexican style stout, or mole, I guess, style stout. I'm sorry, my pronunciation is probably awful. But anyway, we're going in. That's just a very refreshing one. Unlike the other three, this one really doesn't taste like it has 10.5% ABV strength to it. You get none of the boozy notes that you get from the Scotch. You get none of the overpowering flavors you get from the cherry, and it doesn't have the overall beefiness and strength that the coffee has. It's just actually very gentle. The cinnamon works beautifully with the other flavors, and I really do get a lot of cinnamon in this. I get a lot of dark roast mixed with cinnamon, and kind of a smooth, gentle chocolate that I didn't get from the others. And I wonder if that has to do with the cacao nibs that I added. They tend to produce a more bitter chocolate flavor, like a dark chocolate. But I already had a lot of sweet chocolate flavor coming through in the stout from the malts and from the high finishing gravity. So it's interesting that this comes through as smooth chocolate, which you don't get from the base. The one downside of this is I really was hoping for having a nice warming in the back of the throat from the hot chili pepper that I put in there, the chipotle pepper. But to be fair and completely honest, I get absolutely no heat from this. I get absolutely I don't even get a single hint of spice, like hot spice at all. If I'm looking for it, I get a bit of a smoky pepper flavor, but absolutely no heat. So that would have been a really neat kind of mouthfeel like add-on to this. It would have really been fun to experiment with that, but unfortunately, that's not coming through. I'm gonna have to add more peppers next time. I mean, so overall, I mean, that would have played very nicely with the rest of the flavors in this if it had come through as a slight warming spice. But I get nothing, which is unfortunate. Yeah, it's okay that it doesn't come through because the beer itself is totally fine with the cinnamon and the chocolate. It actually does go really nicely if you're fans of those flavors. So, yeah, alright, I'll give that one I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10. So my favorite is obviously the coffee because I'm an absolute coffee addict to begin with. The least favorite is the Scotch because it's just not good. The rest of these are pretty good. I mean, but overall I had a really fun time just conducting this experiment, and even though it resulted in taking away from some of the goodness of the base beer in some cases, it was a really good learning experience because now I know I've got to dial back my oak additions even further relative to the volume of the beer. I know not to ever throw Scotch in beer ever again. I know to dial back the amount of cherry, especially when using fresh fruit. And I know how to do coffee beers properly now and to get the real strong boost of coffee flavor. And I know that I really want to brew this Mexican stout again and get it right with some heat in there. So hotter pepper going in for the secondary, I think, or a lower ABV beer perhaps. But overall, I learned an absolute ton doing this and had a really fun time. So if you are out there and you're thinking about doing something similar with a large batch of very strong beers or beers that tend to do well with adjuncts in them, don't hesitate. Seriously, this is a blast. And it does require a little bit of patience, and you do run the risk of probably ruining a couple of these these fine beers, but it is worth it in the end, and I think that this is actually going to definitely feed into future brewing projects that I have down the road. So stay tuned for a Mexican style stout soon in the future, I think, or maybe a real good coffee porter. So I'm sorry if this video turned out to be a bit longer than I originally intended, but thank you for watching anyway. So if you like the video and you like watching me talk about beer, brew beer, taste beer, all things beer, you find something useful from these videos and you're learning stuff, please like, comment, and subscribe. These things make my YouTube channel more relevant to YouTube and the community of home brewing on YouTube. I really want to use the medium of the internet to show off how awesome homebrewing is and how much fun it can be, because experimentation like this is absolutely the heart and soul of what homebrewing is. So I tend to upload a new video every couple weeks or so. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it is the holiday season right now, so I am kind of a bit behind, so I'm sorry if it's not super frequent, but if you want more frequent updates about what I'm doing, I have an Instagram page. It is @theapartmentbrewer, and I will tend to post there every couple days, and you get to see what's going on in real time versus having to wait several weeks for me to put the YouTube editing in and actually get a video out here. Okay, last but not least, in the description box below, there is a list of the ingredients that I used for each of these 4 adjunct batches. Keep in mind that's for 1 gallon apiece. And as you saw in the video, not all of these produced awesome beers, so keep that in mind. If you want the recipe for the base beer, you're going to have to check out either the brew day video for that or the actual tasting video in the description boxes for each of those. And I've also compiled a list of my own equipment that I use as of now to brew beer with, and there are links to Amazon for each of those individual items if you wish to purchase them for yourself. Be advised that if you do click on a link and buy something through that link, I do earn a very small commission at no cost to you, which goes to support the channel for future brewing endeavors. And as always, make sure that you actually need the item and know what you need for your own specific system and setup versus just buying it blindly. Always. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and gradually finish off these 4 beers over the course of the day while I edit my YouTube video footage. And I will catch you in the next one. So, cheers.